Evo 2004. Daigo Umehara and Justin Wong faced off. Everyone was watching intently. It was the final round of the first match. A young Justin Wong has Daigo frustrated with the effectiveness of his turtle-style playing. With just 26 seconds left, Justin has the advantage. Allowing the clock to run out would secure a victory. Any special attack would secure a victory. Even with a successful block by Daigo, the chip damage would end the round. And Chun-Li dashes forward, unleashing a barrage of kicks. But instead of losing the round, Daigo parries the first few kicks, surprising the crowd. And as the super continues, the crowd's cheering grows with each parry. One final jump, and Daigo swiftly converts into his own super combo. People stand and cheer as they watch one of the most incredible moments in fighting game history pass in real time before their very eyes. This moment to me not only illustrates incredible skill by Daigo, it also highlights how important a certain philosophy is when crafting combat in video games, and that's the importance of having a comprehensive defense system. What makes this moment special to me is how masterfully Daigo can employ Street Fighter Alpha 3's defense system to do the impossible. Now, while the example I'm highlighting in this video is from a tournament fighting game, I believe that the philosophy is true for all combat games. And personally, I feel the key difference between good and bad, and even good and great combat in video games, is defense. Now, after lots of thinking about it, I decided to revamp my YouTube channel. I have made other videos talking about other subjects, and I always knew I wanted to make a channel talking about and reviewing games, but I just wasn't sure how to go about doing it. And with lots of trial and error, I came to the conclusion that I should establish a criteria that I will use to judge games. Now, while I do enjoy music and environment, art, and storytelling, my primary concern is how good any given game's combat system is. So, going forward, I'd like to focus this channel on that aspect of video games specifically, playing and reviewing their combat systems. This first video I would like to use to set that criteria and establish my personal thought process and set the tone for this channel's direction. The most important thing for game developers to keep in mind, in my opinion, is a concept I call flow. I look for combat systems that have a good flow. But what is flow? I would define it as the transitional time period between offense and defense. So, one good example that I could point to help illustrate it are the Star Wars prequels. The choreography for those movies is seamless. Another word that might help you understand what I'm saying is the word smooth. The fighting in the Star Wars movies is really smooth. And I think the reason the fighting is choreographed this way is to help portray a level of mastery. They've become so skilled that the fighting is completely seamless. Martial arts movies are much like this as well. If you watch them, you can see that being able to defend against your opponent's attacks and converting that into your own offense is the key concept to making good choreography. Well, choreography that looks good, in my opinion, at the very least. Compare that to something like Rocky IV, where Rocky and Drago are just punching each other back and forth. Or the movie House of Flying Daggers, where Andy Lau and Takeshi Kaneshiro are just slashing each other back and forth. I think both of these examples demonstrate intense emotion and fighting to the last breath, but I don't find that to be very interesting when it comes to video games. It can work when trying to illustrate an intense or emotional moment for a story, but for the combat itself to only feature attacks is hollow to me. When you have two combatants that have attained a certain level of mastery, it's quite the spectacle. I think it's because watching someone stay lucid enough to read attacks and make those kinds of split-second decisions is quite a joy to watch. But add seamlessly transitioning to your own offense is enough to get people to stand up and cheer. Being able to replicate that feeling in combat while playing a video game is exhilarating, and I think that's what makes Daigo's moment so special. So the first game I want to talk about I think is a shining example of great flow in combat. The first on my list, and it is my current favorite game for its superb combat system, is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. I love this game. It's the chef's kiss in terms of flow, and I haven't played a single game that even comes close to it when it comes down to that. So, I want to break it down and go over how it works and why it flows so well. The default control scheme is basically the same as Elden Ring. You use R1 to attack and L1 to block. R2 activates your special combo follow-ups, and L2 activates your command abilities. Now each weapon has its own unique moveset, and there are basic attacks that have 3-step progressions. After pressing R1, you can follow up with a combo ability. Some combo abilities are limited to the first, second, or third step of the basic attack progression. I find that limitation frustrating, but it's really only a minor negative. These combo abilities are comparable to the Ashes of War from Elden Ring. Now, Stranger of Paradise does not have a heavy attack button. Well, not technically. When assigning combos, you can see here on the left different pathways to activate the combos. Not every weapon has every path available, but let's look at this a little closer. Holding R1, the game's technical heavy attack, lets you follow up with a combo. And as you can see, pressing forward in R1 gives you a path to a combo, pressing left or right with R1 gives you a path, and pressing back with R1. There is one final pathway, and that's following up after a parry with a combo. And like the combos, you can choose to do one of these other inputs on the first, second, and third step of your combo progression. Some weapons are designed around using these directional inputs to your advantage. There are 3 types of physical damage and 8 types of elements. There are magic spells that add damaging debuffs like poison, but I'm not sure that they fall into their own category. Depending on the weapon, pressing R1 and forward does piercing damage, like with the spear and the one-handed sword. Left and right does slashing damage. With the spear, pressing down will do blunt damage. Now some enemies are weak to those physical types as well as an element, so you can use these inputs to determine what they may be weak to. Okay, now that we've talked about the offense, let's talk about what I think is the most important part of any game, and that's this game's defense. The defense in Stranger of Paradise is the best I've ever played. The core idea around defense is the break gauge, the yellow bar at the bottom of the HUD. Think of it like stamina. Taking damage causes you to lose break. If you lose all of your break, you'll go into a crumple state, making you vulnerable to heavy damage. Holding L1 to guard causes you to lose break, but less than if you were to take damage. This can be used to discover the timing of certain attacks. However, guarding when hit by an element will still cause you to take damage. If you press L1 just before an attack lands, you will parry. You'll know you activated it correctly because a blue shield will appear in front of you. A parry will negate all damage. It will not reduce the break gauge, and you will not take the element damage. Learning to do this is critical in my opinion for hard and higher difficulty. You gain command abilities by leveling jobs and unlocking their nodes. Command abilities have different effects: buffing damage, removing debuffs, and some give you other abilities like a sway or recover MP. You can experiment with them to make a build that is truly unique to your playstyle. Be aggressive if you want, or defensive, or maximize your ability as a spellcaster. The game really allows you to be creative with its build combinations. Pressing A or X, depending on the controller you have, will activate the game's dodge. When timed with the same precision as a parry, you will perfect dodge, and you'll know you activated a perfect dodge because Jack will flash white through the damage. The unique mechanic to Stranger of Paradise is the Soul Shield. Holding B or circle will have Jack raise a magic, well, at least I think it's magic shield that, like parry, negates all damage. However, unlike parry, it consumes the break gauge, so it can only be done a limited amount. Many attacks hit multiple times, so reapplying the Soul Shield is key to succeeding in completing the game's harder difficulties. One nice feature of the break gauge is if you hold it while being attacked and you get hit, you'll go into a crumple state if it runs out. But if you tap the Soul Shield with the same precision as parry, even having 1 point in Soul Shield will negate all damage. After a successful Soul Shield, you can immediately follow up with an R1 basic attack that will cause Jack to close distance with an enemy to begin your next attack string. Becoming proficient at this is really important to maintaining an offense against aggressive enemies. Earlier in the video, when discussing mastery, I talked about how exhilarating it is to see someone convert their defense into their own offense. Stranger of Paradise does a really good job of allowing you to do this. Now, some of the inputs that I mentioned earlier can be used defensively. The one-handed sword, the daggers, and the mace have defensive options in their attack combo kit. Pressing R1 and left or right with the one-handed sword or the dagger will cause you to phase through an attack when timed properly, allowing you to transition into a combo. Pressing R1 and down with the one-handed sword can also cause you to phase through an attack to do a slashing counter. The mace has a barrier that when activated will also trigger a counter, and all of these can be followed up with a combo. Getting good at this takes the combat from being good to great in my opinion, and it is what makes this my favorite game right now. Once you put all of this together, it results in one of the best combat systems I've ever played. What makes the game so fluid is how smoothly you can transition from attack to defense and back to attack. Being able to use a combo directly after parry, and being able to follow up a Soul Shield with an R1 basic attack makes the game flow so well. There's always a path back to your offense. It never feels like they're separate things. Some games, to me, the defense and offense feel like they're separate parts. You're waiting for openings to begin your offense. But Stranger of Paradise feels like they're all part of the same attack string. I would really like to see more games implement a combat system like Stranger of Paradise. So, my final determination for Stranger of Paradise combat is rank S. Yes, this is the best combat system I've played, and going forward, I will give other games a grade, showing why I think they're good, why I think they're bad. And the highest rank I will give any game is S tier. I believe Stranger of Paradise meets that grade. I hope you take the time to experience this great game yourself.